Justin Herbert is certainly a very interesting player to talk about, an interesting figure to talk about in today's NFL. He is someone who often gets put very high on top quarterbacks' boards, and for good reason. I mean, the highlights are incredible. If you watch his film, there are games that are just remarkable. But that being said, he just doesn't have the hardware that other players have, right? I mean, Lamar Jackson, when it comes to winning, Lamar Jackson has led his team to have multiple number one seeds. Joe Burrow has been to a Super Bowl. Josh Allen, neither of those things, but has gotten pretty close in both of those categories. And then, of course, Mahomes is Mahomes. Herbert doesn't have any of that stuff, and also doesn't really have a lot of the box score stats that those guys have. So I think it's a fair thing for people to say, does he really belong in that conversation, or even, does he belong in the next tier down even if he doesn't have any of those things? Well, I don't think it's all his fault. And that's really what we're going to get into with the film, is I think he's a lot better than you might think just looking at a box score after the game. And let's get into why. So first, let's start off with a play like this, because again, it's worth mentioning with Herbert. It's not just that he doesn't have the winning. It's also that sometimes the box score stats aren't as good. This game was one that it was a win, but certainly kind of got some criticism for, saying, hey, only scoring 6 points against the Patriots, what's happening? But it's kind of a great example of showing the good with the Herbert and the bad with the team around him. So this play, for example, one-on-one matchup with Keenan Allen, who's a very good wide receiver. And that's what kind of distorts people's perception sometimes. People will say, hey, you have Keenan Allen, you have Mike Williams. What do you mean you don't have help? Well, a lot of times they aren't healthy. Here, Allen is healthy, though, and, let's see what happens on this play. Herbert is going to take the snap. He looks in Keenan Allen's direction, eventually fires in Keenan Allen's direction, and there appears to be a tight window. This is honestly what Herbert kind of has to deal with a lot, is throwing the ball through very tight windows. This time it does not work. It gets incomplete, and because of that, the Patriots are able to get stopped there on third down. It's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, could this play still have maybe worked? Yeah, maybe, for sure. But at the same time, it's just a much higher degree of difficulty play than, even Mahomes, who had his own receiver issues last year, is having to deal with. Like, something like this is another example of kind of exactly what I'm talking about, where it's going to be zone coverage that the Patriots are in. It's going to kind of start off like a 4-man rush, but end up just a 3-man rush. Wasn't sure if that was by design or a player just dropped back into coverage, but either way, the concept you see on the screen is pretty simple. As 2 Chargers players run down the field, one hopefully runs more of a clear out route, and then you have that little bubble where you can try to make a play work. Well, you're going to see Herbert takes the snap. He, looks and fires, and again, you can see why this play can work. And I would also say this is not a perfect throw from Herbert. Herbert could have put this ball a little bit higher up, which would have had a better chance of being complete. As you see, it ends up being incomplete instead, which is certainly something that, is not ideal. So these are not good plays, right? Certainly not good plays. And I think it's fair to say that the majority of, these types of issues are not because of Herbert. While maybe you could still nitpick and say, well, there still was potentially something that could have been done, which means that, if you're a pro-Herbert fan, you can argue pro-Herbert with these plays. And if you're an anti-Herbert fan, you can argue anti-Herbert for these plays. But the reality is, going over to something like this is the majority of what I see when I watch Justin Herbert play. This play, it's man coverage, and you see the route on the screen that could potentially get open against this type of coverage. Justin Herbert is going to take the snap. He runs a play action, starts to roll out a little bit, and then fires down the field, and you see there is a window. Again, not a wide open window, but there is potential if you throw it over the defender for this to be a completion. And what do you usually see when Herbert is in these situations? It's going to be a perfect throw. They don't get the completion, but it's a perfect throw. You see a lot of really high degree of difficulty plays Herbert pulling off consistently, and that's why I just have a hard time blaming him for a lot of this stuff. I think he does do a very good job. It is kind of hard to say, like, oh, if he was in the situation that some of these other guys were in, would he have, way better numbers? Who knows? That's a guessing game. And for that reason, I still could not justify putting Herbert above those other top 4 guys I mentioned, because I do think that those guys have shown that they can, do more with more. And for Herbert, I don't know if the receiving core is going to get that much better this year, but there is one thing that could get significantly better this year. And going over here, this is the example where it's going to be a 3rd down and 6 situation. 3rd down and 6, okay, let's see what happens. What is the play call that you're going to dial up here? Well, this is actually going to be a handoff and a little jet sweep type play. Did not work out as designed. And listen, I get it. The Patriots, the defense was kind of all over the Chargers offense in the passing game, but it also was all over them in the rushing game. So while the Chargers were able to run the ball with some success here and there, this is not a good decision. And it's even more concerning when you factor in like the fact that a coach thought this was the correct call when you have Justin Herbert in the backfield and like we all think he's good. Like that's an issue. Either that's bad coaching or the quarterback is bad, and I don't think it's the quarterback is bad. So I do think that getting Harbaugh there, which even if the receiving core isn't as good next year, might actually not be as bad as people think it might be. But I still don't think it's a great receiving core or anything like. It's still not a good receiving core for sure. But maybe it won't matter as much if you can get some better play calling with a Greg Roman tends to like to, not rely on receivers as much. And for what it's worth, for all his faults, has typically done a pretty good job at getting the most out of bad receiving cores over the course of his career, even if he has some other issues. So that could certainly help out Herbert. Getting guys just to be more open, more consistently is just something that isn't something that would help. It's a necessary part of Herbert's game. Of what could help Herbert's game. Like he needs that is what I'm trying to say. But this also creates a conundrum, right? Everything I'm saying is like, okay, that's fair. Like if you gave him a better receiving core, he would be better. Like you could say that about literally every quarterback in football. The kind of issue and part of why it makes the discussion at times fun and at other times infuriating is like, then what is it with Herbert? Can you just never criticize anything he does because he's in a bad situation? And the answer to that is no, of course not. I remember when the Panthers traded for Sam Darnold, me criticizing the move and Panthers fans saying he was with the Jets. What was he supposed to do? And my kind of argument was, well, look at some of these plays where things did go well and he was still screwing up. I think for Herbert, when you watch the film, you see plays that should be working because of what he's doing still not work. And that's why I'm very much more pro Herbert than probably the average person, but certainly the people that dislike Herbert, and certainly more than I was on Sam Darnold, right? And also Herbert has, better box score numbers and advanced numbers than even Darnold did. So that it's not obviously I'm just bringing it up as an example. But it's also fair to say, like, I do have some critiques of Herbert's game. Like, I do think it's fair to say that Lamar Jackson's had some tough receiving cores, and he's been able to still make things work. A lot of times it's through his legs or through his playmaking. I think I would like to see Herbert make an effort to be a bit more of a playmaker. He is so good at it. I don't know why he doesn't do it more frequently. That is something I would like to see more of is, hey, sometimes when guys aren't getting open, run the ball or get outside the pocket to where they have more time to get open, right? Those are the things that I think some of those other top guys, like even Joe Burrow is not the athlete Herbert is, but he tends to use what he can better than Herbert, which is why I think he's the better player as of right now. But again, these are not massive criticisms, and I think as a whole, the long and short of it is that I think Herbert's a really good player who's been put in a bad situation for the Chargers, and in a right situation, I think he could win an MVP. I think that's possible. I'm not saying it will happen. I think he could, in a perfect situation, make it happen. Not sure if that's going to happen this year, though, but those are kind of my thoughts on Herbert. My opinion on the Herbert discussion. What is your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.